Look on your social media feeds. It's a bird. It's a plane. No, it's Krypton's Legacy, a Superman podcast. Covering all of Clark Kent's greatest adventures in comics, film, and animation. With your hosts, Adam and Nick.
Welcome to another episode of Krypton's Legacy, a Superman's podcast and vidcast. As always, I'm your host, Adam, and with me is my co-host, Nick. Nick, how's it going?
Hey, happy to be here. I'm doing great. Happy to be back talking another essential piece of Superman media. Excuse me. I'm not gonna spoil what exactly that is, but yeah, happy to be back here, Adam. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. We are in the year and summer of Superman.
Finally,
it's a good time. Although that 6 months right now at least feels like it's going to crawl here, especially after before the holidays we got that exceptional teaser trailer that we got, and so it's making the wait a little bit longer. But we do, as we pledged to do at the last year. We said we're going to cover, in addition to the comics that we review and the graphic novels and such, we're going to go through some of the live action media for Superman as we geared up towards the new movie. And the last time we did a live action movie was the 1978 Superman the movie. Since we like to do things in somewhat of an order, that means we're doing Superman 2 today. The theatrical cut, obviously. But before that, as we do, when there's news regarding the property that we're discussing, we cover it and share our thoughts on it. Speaking of, promotion for the new Superman movie, we got a 30-second TV spot with one of the football games. I guess it probably aired on both. Mm-hmm. I only watched parts of one, but we got it with the football games over the past weekend, and most of it was footage we had seen in the teaser trailer. There were two newer pieces of material. It was Lex Luthor getting off of his aircraft vehicle, which is important to know. The color scheme, I can't talk today, is green and purple, which is the classic, Lex Luthor battlesuit colors, which I like, and
a little bit of a tease.
I think chances are getting that battlesuit are getting increasingly better as we go along. And then the second shot was, it started with Superman flying in through the Arctic, and we see him from behind. The cape is swelling, and the beautiful yellow S on the back. And then he does this barrel roll, very similar to the way Top Gun, the jets flew and did it. And that's where the Top Gun reference came from. And then he turns, and we get a close-up shot of his face. Now, this close-up shot of his face amounted to about 1.5 seconds of footage. And as the internet, specifically Twitter, now called X, basically Hellscape 101, is off to do, they made a big deal about relatively nothing, saying that his face looks weird, the CGI is bad, and his eyes are going into different directions. Now, I don't know about you, but I watched that clip, and I'm like, I like that barrel roll. It's pretty cool. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, I didn't spend my time pausing and slow-mo looking at every detail of his face. Like, it's not something I want to do. Like, What for? But here's the interesting thing of note is imagine flying at that speed as a can't call him a human being because he's not a humanoid being, right?
Yep. See what you're going.
If you're flying at that speed, crazy shit's gonna happen to your face. Like it's gonna pull back. It's gonna look a little weird. Your eyes are gonna be being hit by
Anybody ever
wind.
skydived before?
Anyway, here's what you do. Next thing you're in a passenger seat in a car and you're going at a decent speed, roll down the window and stick your face out the window. See what happens. When wind is hitting your face, stuff gets weird. Right? So that's one thing. The second thing is that James Gunn came out because he was asked a question about the CGI. Some smart film expert on social media said the shot looks great, but the CGI looked a little off. And he's like, there is no CGI in this shot. It's a combination of drone footage from that wherever they filmed in where were they in Iceland? Where the hell were Norway? Where
I
were
think it was Iceland or Australia. I think it was Iceland. Yeah.
So they were drone shots, right? And then separate footage of David Cornsweet probably on some sort of gimbal, right? And then they was edited into the other footage or spliced together. So there's no actual CGI here. So anybody thinking, oh, well, the CGI, it's not CGI. I hate to break it to you. And when I read that from James, one of the things that I took to heart was it's really nice to know that they're doing as much practically as they possibly can. And the reason I say that is because I am a huge defender of Superman Returns. I like that movie more than Man of Steel, if I'm being honest, although it has flaws. I prefer, if I had to watch either of them, no, I tend not to want to go back because I got this shiny new thing that I'm looking forward to that I'd rather spend my time on. But if I had to go back and watch one, I choose Superman Returns over Man of Steel. However, I can acknowledge that there are certain shots in Superman Returns that when Brandon Routh is flying, it is clear as day, plastic-looking CGI Brandon Routh. Like there's no denying it.
Mm-hmm.
That's not what I saw here with this footage. You know that what's it called? Uncanny Valley or whatever the hell it's called. You could tell in Superman Returns. Here, I don't know, in that 1.5 seconds, I didn't notice anything off. And I'm tending to think that it's several things. We know which group is the main proponent of this criticism. I'm not going to specify who they are by name because everybody knows.
Right? I know who you are.
Okay, so there's that. Second of all, I think unfortunately social media has given anybody with a keyboard the delusion of thinking that they're film experts. Because we have people that have never spoken about cinematography before, all of a sudden talking like they know what is involved in the actual job of being a cinematographer. Now they're experts in color grading, and now they're all CGI connoisseurs, apparently, even though CGI wasn't used in these particular shots. So I think, it's like, because anybody can criticize and review something, there's a lot of people that think they're experts, and they're really not. And when James Gunn comes out and shoots you down saying there's no CGI, like it's just showing that a lot of you people that think you know everything know nothing. And here's to those people that basically got shut down by James Gunn if they levied that CGI criticism. Here's my suggestion to you. Just watch movies as a fan. Either you like something or don't, and then leave it at that. Because clearly, when you open your mouth, what's coming out should be coming out of the opposite end of the spectrum. So there's that. The other thing is, I think there are people that want to find, they want this film to fail so bad that they are nitpicking at every little thing. And the other thing, I think what may be an issue in terms of it looking different, because this film does look different than the other Superman films that and live action stuff that we've been exposed to, especially in the last since 2006. So let's call it a spade a little spade. And I think what it is the fact that we're seeing a Superman that is infused with color. And what I mean by that is the aforementioned Superman Returns was very dark and dreary color palette. Same with Man of Steel. Same with BVS. Same with Zack Snyder's Justice League. That all had the very dour, muted color. Those all had the muted color scheme, right? The color palette. And as much, and I love Superman and Lois, right? But even that suit and that color grading was darker in nature. This movie is really the first time since 1978, 1980, or let's even include the lesser lights, 1987 Superman 4, that anybody's seen color and vibrancy in the Superman movie. And I think that's probably what's throwing people off, is because for the last almost 2 decades, we've been on film at least jammed with let's mute the colors. Dower, he's trying to find himself, and we've got to reflect that in the imagery. And so that's what part of the thing I think it is too. Aside from the ingenuous people that just want to again see this film fail for whatever reason. What are your thoughts on the whole controversy?
Yeah, I mean, look, for what it's worth, I think the aerial flying sequences that apparently is so heavily inspired by Top Gun Maverick, I think if that's a snippet of more things to come, I thought that was a pretty damn cool shot. As far as anybody like nitpicking things like CGI or the way his face looks, the way that his eyes look, I mean, I've said this several times before. That was just a teaser trailer. That wasn't even like an official first look at the movie. It was just an appetizer of what the things are gonna, of things to come. This movie is still 6 months out. I mean, like 5-6 months out. I mean, there's still post-production being done. The VFX, I'm sure, are still being tidied up on. So, like, of course, things are going to look a little, maybe not as complete as some might like. And I get that. Look, it's the same cinematographer that did The Flash, and The Flash is not a well-liked movie, at least on Twitter, it's not. So it just seems like it's the right thing to do to hate on this movie the way it looks, because people hated the way The Flash looks. I mean, that to me, like, that's a ridiculous sentiment on this one. I mean, the movie literally is not going to CinemaCon because the movie's not finished yet. They would rather release a trailer at CinemaCon to movie exhibitors to give them a preview of what's to come than show the whole movie and risk backlash coming to your movie. Even though could they show Superman to movie exhibitors at CinemaCon in April? Sure, they probably could.
Sure.
But why would you want to risk that again?
They did that with the Flash.
Exactly.
And word coming out was, hey, this is going to be
exactly.
Yeah. Let's pump the champagne. And then I still like the movie, but the general audience did what the general audience did.
I think the movie is going to be spectacular. I think there's a lot of hype. There's a lot of excitement. I watch the morning news every morning, and it's one of Al Roker's, who's a famous news anchor. It's one of his most anticipated movies in the summer. Yeah, so I think this movie is going to be just fine. I think we all just need to get outside of our heads a little bit. Just get excited. Let yourself be excited. Let's hope this movie's great, and let's just enjoy this ride. I mean, it's been over a decade plus since we've had this level of excitement and buzz and intrigue. Let's just enjoy this ride, man. Like, I don't understand this need to nitpick every little thing right now.
Here's another thing to be mindful of. That 30-second TV spot, along with the teaser trailer, as of I think yesterday or maybe the day before, I'm getting my days confused, but either yesterday or the day before, both of them were the top 2 trending videos on YouTube. So you know what? I don't think the general audience gives a shit about the so-called controversy on X.
Yeah.
I really don't think the general audience cares.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, and in 6 months, do you think the general audience is going to remember that one,
Yeah.
TV spot that had 1.5 seconds of his face? No.
Yeah. The average person is not going to be sitting in that movie theater wondering, I think that looks weird. If it jarringly looks bad, then sure, anybody would point that out.
If
But
this movie comes out and it looks like Ant-Man and the Wasp and Thor: Love and Thunder, because some of the CGI in that was horrendous.
sure.
Especially I remember that scene in Thor where the kid's face was projected, and Thor and
Yeah, I don't think we're getting anything like that.
It's just like that. Then, hey, by all means, criticize the hell out of it, but I don't think that's what's going to happen. But again, that's comparing a so-called finished movie to a TV spot with and 1.5 seconds of footage. So, I'm just saying, let's all calm down.
Let's get ready for the Puppy Bowl because that's gonna be our new look apparently. Can't wait.
And it's probably going to be a clip
of
Krypto and Superman, or just Krypto playing catch with himself. I don't know, but either way, I'm sure it'll be pretty big.
Well, brilliant, Mark. That's brilliant.
Yeah. But the other super related news is that James Gunn took to Twitter the other day to celebrate and announce the commencement of filming for Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow. And the image that he released was of Millie Alcock sitting in a director's chair, but her back was to the camera, so all you see is her hair. And then the logo on the director's chair, the S logo, and it is the same style as David Cornswet's S shield, which is worth noting. That color looks a little darker, but again, like people were saying, well, the inside of the shield is not yellow; it's blue, which I don't know if I'm going to take that as, oh my God, they changed the color of the inside of the shield, because we've seen it in the past where what's on a placard or a chair is not always indicative of the color scheme of something. Like, remember those placards when they were doing the table read for Superman?
Mm-hmm.
Some had
each one was different.
Some had blue, so you really can't make a judgment of that. I think the important thing to note is that filming has commenced and that the shield design is the same as her Kryptonian cousins. That's the important thing. Also, I don't know about if you noticed, I think because the set that she seems to be on is a bar set. And remember, there's that alien bar in the book, and it looked very familiar to that, or similar to that. So that's what I thought. That's where I think she was, and probably under whatever the coat she's wearing is the Supergirl suit. But God forbid they show us that. Just wait till Superman.
I guess.
Because they're filming in a studio, so unless she walks out of the studio with the suit on, and there's somebody ready to take a picture, I think it's going to be controlled, and we're going to get the first shot we get is going to be a professional still. It's not going to be like when Superman was filming in the streets of Cleveland.
No,
and I think this is going to be different just because this is more of a sci-fi sort of required environment, so that's all going to be done pretty much on the sound stages, I think. I would assume so. But what did you think of that image and that sort of announcement?
Well, Adam, I think she looks like a Millie Bucks. And I had to pull the zinger on that one. I think you're. Yeah, I had to. It was right there for me. I think you're spot on with the logo. I am fully anticipating. That's just me. I'm sure you are as well, because I know we've talked about this. I think she's gonna have the exact same color scheme as David Cornsweet is with her suit. It's gonna be the same crest, same kind of color of that. I'm sure she'll have the crest on the back of her cape too. It's gonna look amazing.
Absolutely.
I'm expecting it's gonna look as close to what the outfit is in Woman of Tomorrow as possible. Right? I'm sure there might be some modifications, but I think it's going to look as close to as comic accurate as it's gonna get. I'm really excited that we got that first look. Filming's up and running. Everything's going smoothly. Superman's gonna be promoted now. Here's Supergirl kind of getting ready to follow suit. If everything goes according to plan, I mean, I don't see why we don't get our first look of her as Supergirl by June, like right before, because that by that point it's like a year out from the movie, and that kind of seems like as good a time as any to kind of get what her first official look is. That way it's not spoiled for the movie, for things like that. You can kind of get a jump on it. So I think a year out to me sounds about right. Which
Especially
if it's gonna keep their June release date, I would go with that.
especially if she's in Superman, which we know, which
I think the trades have confirmed
yeah,
that.
I
Yeah.
think the trade said that she is. So
Yeah.
what was the harm of just before the move, before she first appears in Superman, um, dropping that back? Now I don't, unless unless she's not dressed in the costume in her appearance, which I don't see why she wouldn't be.
Yeah.
Like I can't imagine Kara showing up in jeans and a t-shirt
Yeah.
saying it because I'm taking off, right? I mean,
Yeah.
she,
I think she's in costume that whole story. So yeah.
yeah, she's probably be in costume. So, so yeah, that makes sense to me. But like I said, I'm just happy that it's filming, and
Yeah.
I know this is the Superman podcast, so this doesn't necessarily correlate. Well, it kind of does because there is a Green Lantern in Superman, but it's also nice to know that as of this recording, they are doing camera tests.
Mm.
Now, people are saying, "Oh, it's filming." It's not quite filming yet. Camera tests are the step before filming, so it's not filming per se as of right now. The camera test is happening, and then filming will commence shortly. But so
have faith. Have faith.
the point I'm making is we've got Creature Commandos is out there in the world. You can watch it on HBO Max. We've got Peacemakers in the can, like it's being edited and whatever. Superman is also being edited, and the marketing is going to kick up. Now Supergirl is filming, and Green Lantern is just about to start filming. And the beauty of it all is it's all happening, and there's no behind the scenes drama. It's just things are happening as they should, and I say that's great, and what a time it is to be a DC fan. Any other thoughts?
I'm just excited that yet again the super people, after being on the shelf in the back burner for so many years, and granted I know they were in the CW, and they had great runs on television, but I'm glad that the super people are back on the big screen where they belong, and they're kicking off the DC universe after having so many years of production hell, or development hell, I should say. It's just refreshing and cool. Like, I think, to be a Superman fan right now, and to really lean into the power of the us. So I'm really excited.
Yeah.
First and foremost, and look, these next few years they're going to be fun. They're going to be exciting. We may get a bump in the road or two, which is to be expected. But by all accounts, this is a really, really exciting time right now. So I think let's just enjoy it.
Said it better myself. That's all the news that we really have this week. So we'll take a quick break, and then on the other side, we will travel back to 1980 to discuss before either of us were even born, and discuss Superman 2. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
What's up, everyone? It's the Emerald Enthusiast. For all of your multiverse viewing and listening needs, check out our shows, which include Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Ghostbusters, Power Rangers, the Marvel Universe, and the DC Universe, including the Emerald Echo podcast. You can check us out on Podbean, and remember to subscribe right here on YouTube. That's the Multiverse Musings Podcast Network. From the first podcast to the last.
And we're back. And as promised, we are going to continue our look through of Superman's history in live action. And this time we are stumbling on the second film in the live action franchise, Superman 2, which was released in 1980. This is the Richard Lester cut of the film. And essentially, it is, in the truest sense, a continuation of the first film. Like, it picks up right where the second one left off.
Mm-hmm.
And what I like about this film is that it directly deals with the ramifications of Superman's choices that he makes at the very beginning of this movie. Because in this movie, when he, his first act is to foil a terror plot and to stop a bomb from going off at the Eiffel Tower. And of course, Lois is in the midst of it all and has climbed. I think it's climbed to the top of the freight elevator, or the bottom, and she's gotten herself in a very precarious position. Superman flies in to save her, and it was a fantastic sequence, by the way.
It was.
I think one of the challenges with a sequel, but also back in this day and age, was okay. How do we at the very least equal the rescuing of Lois and the helicopter from the first one? Well, this is how you do it.
Mm-hmm.
Have her rescue her from the elevator falling and then stopping the bomb threat at the same, almost simultaneously. So in that respect, I think they equaled their efforts from in that respect. Like, it opened with a pop and a bang. So, and that was very, no pun intended. But in throwing that bomb before it went off into space, that sets free the Phantom Zone villains. And that's what I mean by, like, so there's, the majority of movie 2 is predicated on the consequences of his actions, of his choices. And I like that. And then that carries over as we get into the film with another choice that he makes, that he then has to deal with. But so I like that aspect, because that's not always the case with sequels where it's directly, it's, hey, the hero made a choice and now movie 2 is him gonna have to deal with it. Like the good sequels do that. Like, Spider-Man 2 was that. The Dark Knight was that, right? So, and Superman 2, was before either of those. So
yeah.
Kudos to it for being probably the first one to have to do that or make that choice to do that. And I like that we are dealing with the 3 Phantom Zone villains simply because in the first movie, as great as it is, he doesn't really have anything to fight other than, hey, I'm going to stop this earthquake. So he's fighting the elements, essentially, right? So he has a physical antagonist to battle. I mean, Lex he's going to battle him mentally, which is part of the first one too. But you're not going to see this Superman punch a hole through human Lex Luthor, because this Lex didn't have a battle suit to speak of, right? So we couldn't have that fight back in the day. So I'm glad we're dealing with the 3 Kryptonian villains, and their escape and what happens on. Was it on Mars? Was it on the moon? Where were they?
It was on the moon. Yeah, it was on the moon.
Yeah. That was, look, there was a bunch of it that was played for humor.
Yeah.
But and again, you have to take the time period into perspective. But I did like that in the midst of all the humor, when they decided that they were going to use their powers on those poor astronauts, like there was nothing those guys were going to do. Like they were just cannon fodder.
Yeah.
Um, and is it a little convenient how quickly General Zod kind of realized why they have power? But I mean, sure, it could be seen as a little convenient, but also General Zod, being a general, would probably know that the effects of a yellow sun would have a different effect on Krypton. Like I think that's something he would know.
Mm-hmm.
Like if he was back on Krypton studying, this kind of stuff, other civilizations and whatnot. Because being a general, you'd assume that you'd have to be prepared for attacks from other places. So it didn't seem like too much of a stretch because to me it's like, okay, he'd be aware of something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So they make their way to Earth, and another I think worthwhile focus of the plot was Lois finally putting the pieces together that, okay, Clark is Superman. And I like that they gave us one movie where she had no clue. But by the second movie, you're like, okay, if she is, ignore the fact that she can't spell worth of beans.
Yeah.
And I don't know why that's in every Superman adaptation, because she's supposed to be a Pulitzer Prize winning, or at least, if not winning, caliber journalist, and we insist on she can't spell worth shit. So as much as I despise that little character knickknack that they keep confusing her with, I like that they made her figure it out, because even in 1980, it's like, okay, if she's that smart of a reporter,
mm-hmm.
and she's with him as much as she's with Clark and Superman, if any of them are going to put it together, it's her. And I like that she did. And it also shows, as much as this version of Lois has, it feels like she's more in need of saving than some of the other more modern Loises. If that makes, you know what I'm saying when I say that. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
but in spite of that, like what you see her do at the Eiffel Tower, and then what she does to expose Clark's secret, or what she thinks will expose Clark's secret as Superman, shows her tenacious, her tough as nails drive. Like it showcases, like she threw herself into the falls, or an area of the fall, a more calmer, albeit slightly more calmer area, but thinking, okay, he's Superman, he's going to save me. So, but that drive, that initiative is there, in spite of her being a little more, what's the proper word? Demure, meeker than other Loises.
Mm.
Like her drive and tenacity
Right.
is still there. So I appreciated that. But what did you make of, first of all, what I was talking about, how the movie essentially starts, or the crux of the movie is based off of, a choice that Superman made, and then what do you make of having the three Kryptonians as the main antagonists,
Mm-hmm.
and also Lois discovering the secret identity in this?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's largely why watching Superman 1 and 2 back to back is probably always a great idea if you're going to do it, or watching them relatively similar
Sure, yeah.
to when you see the last one, just because it does directly follow up, like you said,
Yeah.
the events of Superman the movie. And I know for me personally, while I think Superman the movie is one of the great pieces of art that's ever came to cinema. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. The time travel sequence is something that I do still have an issue with, even though I do think that it's one of the
Yeah.
greatest movies of all time. But like you said, the Superman the movie was trying to go for something a little bit more artistic. It was trying to be like a movie that featured a comic book character.
Mhm.
It's why, like we did in our review, it's why the person that wrote The Godfather wrote Superman the movie, because that's what they were going for.
Yeah.
And Superman 2, by all accounts and purposes, was trying to set the blueprint for sequels to come, right, Adam? It was like, now we got to be bigger. Now we got to be bolder. Now we got to be a little bit more comic booky. Now we got to raise
Right.
the stakes up a little bit, right? So this idea that he's not just gonna have a business scheme or whatever you want to call it, with Lex Luthor. These are now 3 Kryptonian villains that he's got to go up against. It's a physical threat, and at the heart of this story, it's really a love story essentially. In this movie, it's where you got something like your Spider-Man 1 and your Spider-Man 2, especially,
Yes.
with this idea that he's Superman, he loves being Superman, but now he feels the desire to be human even more because now he thinks that he's found his true companion in life. So now comes the idea of what does it mean to be a superhero? Can I have it both ways? And if can I have it both ways? What are the boundaries that I have to set? So now comes the idea of adding the stakes to the overall plot of all this. So I personally thought Lois is it's one of those, like, you I guess you really know somebody deep down. I guess you always know them, right?
Yeah.
So this idea that maybe she might not be, the sharpest tool in the shed in all facets of the ground, but when you feel that attraction to somebody, you kind of just know them. So I think this
Sure.
idea that maybe she knew he was Superman just based on hints and clues, even though it's not too much of a time difference,
Yeah.
from Superman the movie to Superman 2, right? Because like you said, they directly follow it up, so she would have really have known,
Yeah.
like right away. Um, and like it's gimmicky, right? I mean, this idea that she would fall and purposely try to harm herself just because she knows that Clark would save her. It's a bit much. You don't really give things like that too, but they were really going for the romance angle of it all,
Right.
so to speak. Like romancing the stone, like the swashbuckling
Sure.
adventure
Yeah.
where the hero is always going to save the damsel, kind of that sort of thing. So I
Sure. Sure.
personally didn't mind it because it kind of
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
set the tone and it set the stage that they both love each other so much that they're going to be willing to do anything for them. Because at the end of the day, she is the one that convinces him not to get too far ahead. She is the one that ultimately convinces him to do the major thing in the movie,
Yeah.
which sets the major plot going forward. And as far as the villains go, I don't want to get too deep into it because I know we're probably going to talk more
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah.
But they're iconic for a reason,
Yeah.
and I'll say that much. It's not just
Yeah.
because of the black leather that I'm sure was probably a
Yeah.
blueprint for
Man.
Batman
Yeah.
Returns and Catwoman. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
No, but what I did like was the way Clark kind of he does save her, but he
he doesn't
does it
savor the way that she
in
thinks.
a smart way to maintain his secret, like to at least momentarily, temporarily diffuse her suspicions.
Right.
I thought that was very clever, and there are several times in this movie where they go out of their way to show Superman's mental intellect, because
Yep.
far too often in sometimes in the general audience perception of Superman is that it's all about muscle, it's all about the powers, it's all about this and that. But it's not. It's as much about his brain and the way he thinks himself out of a situation as it is his physical ability. So I like the way they did that there.
Mm-hmm.
And then he, obviously, um, shortly thereafter, as they're back at the hotel, she's warming up because she had fell in the water. He trips over the bearskin rug, drops his glasses in the small fire, goes to fetch him out. Lois is concerned about his hand, but then there's nothing wrong with his hand, and that's how she figured. At this point, I'm like, I think he wanted to tell her, and we know that from
Yeah.
the first film.
Exactly.
And she's right about subconsciously when he drops the pretense, it's like, okay, you figured it out, and he's like, I can't believe I did that. She goes, maybe Your mind didn't want to, but your heart did. I think that's exactly the case because he's been itchy to tell her since movie one. So
Mm-hmm.
subconsciously, I think he did that on purpose. Um, and you know, then they go and he takes her to the fortress. They have a nice, he basically tells her everything about what the fortress is, how it came to be, et cetera, et cetera. They have a nice dinner, and then there's in a separate hallway or a little crevice in the Fortress of Solitude. There's a conveniently placed bed for them to engage
Right. Right.
in extra super activities. Um, but of course, the important piece of that is not the fact that there's a bed there and that they have, you know, relations. It's the fact that in order to be with her, he has to uh, sacrifice his powers.
Mm.
And he has this whole conversation with a hologram of his mother, where she goes through great pains to make sure, is this a choice that you're sure that you want to make? I also like that they went with the mother here. First of all, I know in the context of the real world scenario, they had to go with the mother because they were having a monetary dispute with Martin Brando and the situation with Richard Donner, and so Brando was off the table. But the in-story aspect of going with him conversing with his mother, I think is important because I don't think there's enough emphasis put on his Kryptonian mother in any of these adaptations, with the exception of probably this and Smallville. And the reason why I say Smallville is um, in Smallville, when Clark has a memory of his very early life on Krypton, he remembers that his mother's name is Lara, and his first words as he was growing up in Smallville were Lara. And so it kind of gives his mother a little bit more added weight there. And so does Superman too, by having her be the one to, like, he's saying, look, I found my true love. And it makes sense that he'd be telling that to his mother, because oftentimes when you find somebody that you're in love with and you think is going to be the love of your life, and prospectively a wife or a husband, it seems to me more often than not, the mother is the first one that you have to talk with.
Yeah.
So I thought that was really a really nice touch, even though it was in the real world scenario, it was a necessity, but it turned out, I think the movie is better off for it.
Mm-hmm.
By having it be the mother. So Superman goes into a chamber that harnesses red sun radiation, and that strips him of his powers. And so him and Lois are off doing whatever they're doing. I don't have to fill in the gaps because this is not the porn parody version of Superman. You can figure out what they're doing. Meanwhile, the villainous three have come to Earth, or planet Houston, as they mistakenly refer to it, and are absolutely wreaking havoc on this. I can't remember the name of the little town, but whatever it was.
Yeah.
They're just absolutely destroying it. And again, there's comedic undertones to the scene, to the scenes, but that's just because of the nature of the tone of these movies. However, when they're causing some destruction, that's a decent amount of destruction.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they're taking helicopters down with their freeze breath and their heat vision, and it's not, they're tossing farm folk through barns. It's not all just jokes and giggles. Like they're causing some serious havoc. And then Zod basically announces to the world that he's taking over, and asks the question: is there anybody to challenge him? The other thing that I think is worth noting is Lex's progression and intelligence in this movie. I like Lex here far more than I did in Superman the movie,
Hmm.
for the sole purpose of the way he, first of all, tracks the fortress and is able to learn about the three Kryptonians, and then tries to become like their conduits to he's a conduit for them to for them conquering Earth, which is a very typical, even a modern day Lex Luthor play, where he would, Lex would often, you'll see him often partnering up with maybe somebody like Brainiac or Zod to try and to try and his thing is bring down Superman, but typically in the comics, but you often see that partnering up or partnering up, but also using them to his own ends, and you see that from Lex here. So I much prefer that than I want to make. I want to sell land and gouge people out of land. Although he still wants.
He still wants land.
He wants
Yeah.
land since he wants to rule Australia because of beachfront
Yeah.
property. But aside from that, I like Lex's portrayal and perspectives and motivations more in this movie than I did in the first one. What are your thoughts on two fronts? When the Kryptonians start their takeover,
Mm.
and also Lex and his machinations.
Yeah, so I think the Kryptonians wreaking havoc when they fully arrive like on Earth and they're making their presence known. That's always the part of the movie that I always go so back and forth on because like as a kid I thought they were very menacing and they were evil, right? And then as like I've gotten older and I've watched it, then you kind of start to feel the gimmicky of it all, the gimmickiness of it all. With the levitating fingers and this idea that they do cause destruction so easy, and this idea that their first instinct is to flirt with the one female antagonist right away, even though she manhandles them
Well, yeah.
like a base
You don't want to
like
mess
a
with her.
toy,
Yeah,
right? So it's like yeah, like there's certain tropes that are still very much in play, and it's just the time period, just the
yeah,
way it was made.
yeah,
But it is one of those things like it was very very gimmicky. But you just gotta roll with it. You just gotta roll
yeah,
with it.
yeah,
Um, as far as the Lex thing, I'm kind of right there with you because it just seems like it was a natural progression from the first movie to have Lex wanting to take that extra step further. Being that, well, I tested Superman. I know what he can do. I know what he can't do. I know that I can't take him down physically, so why don't I use my means to an end and essentially hire these Kryptonian thugs that can do my dirty work for them? And then I'm sure him being the scheming businessman like we know him to be, I'm sure there was going to be some kind of plot twist or double crossing going on. Might I add, because he's Lex Luthor, right? So um, to me, I think that he was a little bit smarter in terms of that he wasn't going for the obvious. He was trying to use those Kryptonians to his advantage, and then if he had succeeded, who knows what might have happened. But I do think that if I'm going from the first movie to the second, it wasn't necessary progression for Lex Luthor as a villain and as a character, I think.
right. So of course, Clark and Lois come back from the fortress and they stop at a diner, and there's a bully that tries to take Clark's spot next to Lois and tries to flirt with Lois, and Clark takes offense to that and starts a fight with this guy, and this guy thoroughly beats the crap out of him because, again, he no longer has his powers. Superman or Clark realizes he can bleed for the first time. So when Batman asked, "Do you bleed?" he should have watched Superman 2. He would have known. If that Batman had used prep time like the comic book version does, he would have known that already. But I digress. Um, but um, but yeah, and so as he's being attended to by Lois, they hear on the news that Rod and the other two have come down, and they've essentially taken over the White House. That was a really cool sequence, by the way. The White House takeover, that was really well done.
Yeah.
So much so that it inspired the White House sequence in X-Men 2. So
boom,
show that out there. That was a really cool sequence. They even destroyed Mount Rushmore. With their, and they put their three faces.
They put their own faces on there. Yeah,
which is a miracle. I mean, Heat Vision cannot draw. I mean, is they so that's
they knew exactly how to draw themselves with Heat Vision so perfectly.
They're artists. I mean, it's insane. But so I mean, so now of course Clark realizes that, oh crap, I need to go back and try and get my powers back. Before we get there, the interesting thing to me is when Zod confronts the actual president. One of the things I liked was when he walks into the Oval Office and he sees the eagle there, the presidential seal with the eagle, and he's like, and he looks down and he's like, "Oh, you're practicing worshiping things that fly. Very good." Like that line, it's so good. Like it's so those lines from Zod were great because while certain scenes with him were infused with the comedic stylings of the day, his line delivery was always on point. Like he was like you could tell he's the theater trained actor who took things very seriously and very, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And just that delivery of the way he's like, "Oh, you're practicing worshiping things that fly. This will serve you well." I did like that.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Even when he sussed out the fake president. He's like, "You're not the president."
Yep.
Nobody that leads so many.
That was pretty cool.
Yeah. So I like that aspect of it. That was really cool. With Superman getting his powers back, and this is where the different cuts becomes problematic, because all of a sudden in the darkened sort of wreckage of the fortress, which I don't know why it's so wrecked, come to think of it, because at this point the three
probably before money went in the chamber, it must have took.
I know wrecked.
That's the only thing I can think of.
Anyway, conveniently, the green crystal that created the fortress is present, and Clark is screaming for Jor-El. Jor-El is answering, but he sees the green crystal, and next thing you know, the next time we see Clark, he's Superman again. Now, here's where the theatrical or the Richard Donner cut would have fit. Like, I still think a perfect version of this movie is somehow a melding of both. Like parts of one and parts of the other. Because here's the part where the Donner version, where Jor-El kind of sacrifices his AI life force to give Superman his powers back, makes more sense than, "Oh, I found the green crystal and suddenly I have my powers." Like every time I watch this movie, that's a sticking point where I'm like, okay, but how? Like what does he do with that crystal that makes him get his powers back? Does he hold it to his heart? Does he reignite the console and reverse it? Like, what does he do to get his power? Like, it just, I get it. I got to suspend my disbelief, but at least in the Donner cut, it's like, okay, that makes more sense.
Right.
Sort of, even though I don't know how an AI construct can sacrifice a life force that it doesn't necessarily have. Anyway, But I can somehow I can park my suspension of disbelief for that, as opposed to, oh look, he found the green crystal and he grabbed it, and I'm supposed to believe that just gave him his power back. But that's one of the few times where if there was a melding of the two versions into one, I think it would be the perfect version of this movie. But I digress. Before Superman comes back, of course, Lex makes his deal with the Kryptonians that if he gets Australia, he will take Zod and his cronies to Superman. After Zod threatens to kill them several times, they agree, and off to the Daily Planet they go. Again, more destruction there. So again, throw all the comedy aside, these three Kryptonians cause a lot of damage, a lot of serious damage.
Yeah.
And the one scene that again, there I have some problems with suspension of disbelief. There's a point where Zod grabs Perry White.
Yeah.
Or what was it, Non or was it Zod? I can't remember which one. Was it Non or Zod?
Zod grabs Perry White. Yeah.
So
yeah.
Zod grabs him and does this, lifts him up, and smacks his head against the ceiling, and Perry White is unconscious. Now, again, I get it's a movie. I get it's about a guy that flies, so suspension of disbelief has to be taken. But I'm no medical professional. How did that not kill him? Well, how is Perry White still alive?
That tile must have been really paper thin, man.
Because at minimum he's got a broken neck. At minimum. Okay, so I just want to point that out.
It just gets right up. I got a little bit of a headache.
Yeah, don't worry. Just give me two Tylenol. I'm good.
Yeah, just give me some Tylenol.
So Lynch comes in and says, okay, and again Zod berates him and says, you promised me the son of Jor-El. Where is he? And so he's like, oh, don't worry, just take Lois and you'll find him. But Superman shows up. That's his big return, remember? And he's that's where we get the line, General, would you care to step outside? Which is a great moment in the film, and is just a great encapsulation of Christopher Reeve's Superman. Because yes, he can have those moments where his Superman is more compassionate and caring and kind, but when he wants to get into badass serious mode, just look at that and you see it in spades. And for the most part, I like that battle in the streets of Metropolis between Superman and the three Kryptonians, because all of the powers are on display in this sequence. And for a movie made in 1980, that is a far tougher task to showcase all those superpowers and abilities than it is in today's day and age. And so, again, for the most part, the fight is really cool. Like, I like the sort of the dueling. When they were using their heat vision, him and Zod, it was very similar. I mean, we saw something like that with Superman and Doomsday in BVS. So I guess you could say Superman 2 was the blueprint, but anyway, I digress. You see the interesting part of that fight was like the Kryptonians are smart enough to use Superman's emotional connection with humanity against them. Like when they pick up that bus full of people and throw it, and he catches it, and then he realizes, okay, I gotta get the fight away from the people, otherwise they're gonna kill all these people. That's what prompts the whole, I gotta take them to the fortress to handle this. But everything in the fight leading up to it, before he takes off to the fortress, I loved it, with the exception of, again, here's where Richard Lester could have dialed back on the comedy. When Zod and Ursa and Non are using their freeze breath to sort of cause this wind, this like hurricane type wind that is blowing people away. One of the guys, like everybody's like we're trying to run for their life and he's screaming and all that stuff. And there's this one guy on a pay telephone, right?
Mm.
And everything's being ripped apart. The telephone's being ripped off of the pole, and he's still carrying on with this conversation in the midst of all that. And I'm like, what? like if you watch it, and I've never noticed this before until now, he's carrying on his conversation, laughing about whatever the other guy is saying on the other end of the phone. And I'm like, okay, there's where they could have dialed back the comedy. Like that wasn't needed.
Mm-hmm.
But aside from that, I loved everything about the Metropolis fight. Well, what was your take on all that?
Yeah, I mean, even to take it a step back further, Adam. I don't know about you, but every time that I've seen Clark get beat up in that diner, it breaks my heart, man. It's a little gut punching. Not gonna lie, because it's very emotional. The fact that it's when he sees his first drop of blood, and then he sees that there's threats that are bigger than him that are out there, that he realizes that he made a mistake. And I guess to bring everything really full circle is that I do kind of like how you said earlier that it makes a lot of sense that he would go to his mom first, or that the mom would be the one that ultimately gives him the approval for him to give up his powers in the first place. I like that when he goes back to try to redo his decision, it's that he asks for his father. So he knows that his father would probably be
when you've done
like,
something stupid, you can answer to your father.
I screwed up. Then. I'm sorry. Yeah. To give your point, clarity of like blending the two, I do that when you look at it in context. I guess in a way it sort of does work. It just does kind of suck. Like you said, that they couldn't actually get Marlon Brando to film the continuation of the context of that scene. But I do that when you look at him holistically. It's like, yeah, his mom gives him the okay. And then when he screws up and realizes he needs to change it, he asks for his dad to try to make everything better. So I guess when you look at it in hindsight, it does kind of work out. But look, when he says General, care to step outside, that always gets me pumped up. I think that it's an iconic moment in Superman lore for a reason. I think that the battle was added a really lot of high stakes as well. Like we said, they went bigger and bolder. Metropolis is more in danger. And again, Superman's intellect is at the forefront. Like you said in the beginning, Adam. He decides that I can't solve this issue without endangering or getting more people in danger. So I got to take him out of the danger. So he takes me to the fortress. I thought that was a great usage of Superman's intellect.
And again, I just want to point again. I'm not trying to dog on a particular movie, but I just want to point out that the Christopher Reeve Superman was at this point in his existence. This is still what? He's weeks into the job?
Yeah, I don't even think, it's not even a year, I don't think. Yeah.
No,
not even, yeah.
Maybe a couple months?
Maybe, yeah.
And he still had the wherewithal to say, shit, I better take these guys away from general population.
I see people getting blown away. Let me just keep the battle going.
Because otherwise, it's going to get worse. Meanwhile, everybody likes to say, well, but in Man of Steel, you see, he just started out as Superman. He didn't know any better. That's not an excuse. They're almost virtually at similar points in their career. Stop with the nonsense. It's not a good excuse. I'll move on. So they take Alexa's advice and they abscond with Lois to the fortress. And see, here's where, and there's a great line from General Zod where as soon as he sees the fortress, he's like, how morbid, a monument to a dead planet. No, and he goes, no, what did he say? No creativity, something along the no creativity.
It was great.
Like, Zod has no no emotion, no pent up, nostalgia for his home planet. He's just, man, they're dead. I'm not. I don't give a shit about those people. I'm out for myself now. I can rule this world and don't have to answer to nobody. So just his lack of empathy for Krypton in that moment was like, how morbid, was great. What proceeded with the holograms, the Superman holograms, and the cellophane, the saran wrap S that he throws, and the finger zapping. That part I could have done without because I'm like, here's the thing. There's nothing in the fortress. There's no piece of technology alluded to before that says I can create like like I don't have a hall of mirrors here that can create duplicates of myself. There was nothing set up. It just look. I can create 10 of me and fool these people.
Yeah.
And then what is with that? What is with that S thing? I mean, what is that? Where did that come from?
That's the Ram Wrap ass.
You have a utility belt like Batman. Go from? He just has things, and it's never explained. The bed was there.
Super bat.
There's the surround wrap S. There's the mirror, the hall of mirrors where there are no mirrors. I'm like, where did all this come from? And then the two of them, Zod and Superman, doing this laser finger zapping thing. I'm like, what's this power? This is another power they've invented. So let's do a count. They invented time travel. He can time travel on his own, apparently. From the first one, he can project holograms of himself. That's number 2, and he's got the laser pointer finger. That's power number 3. So they gave him 3 powers that he never had before. So that whole bit just turned me right off. Like I'm like, what is this? And this happens every time I watch. You can imagine me watching these movies for the first time in full around the time Smallville came out.
Yeah.
And being like, wait, what powers? I don't remember these powers. And it still bugs me. As many times as I've watched it to these days, I can't figure it out for the life of me.
Talk about coming back stronger, better than ever.
Yeah. So I didn't like any of that. The best part of the Fortress sequence, was when he creates a whole thing with Lex.
Mm-hmm.
The fool Zod and his cronies, where he's rigged the chamber that stripped him of his powers to strip so he would stand inside the chamber and be protected. All the while, the red sun radiation is outside and dampering the powers of the 3 Kryptonians. That was so clever. And the fact that he told Lex, and he inversed it because he knew Lex has a big mouth and would double cross him, again, shows the genius of Superman. That was the best part of that whole fortress. That part when he does kneel in front of Zod and then grabs his hand and breaks his hand. That was the best part of the whole fortress sequence. But the 15 minutes before, they could have eliminated it, and I would have been fine with it. And again, when the 3 Kryptonians fall into the abyss, I always figured, okay, it's not that. I mean, there's probably snow down there, and it shows them all sliding down the pillars. So it's not like they're falling aimlessly. But it's like they're on a wall, and so it's like, okay, they're probably not alive. Like I thought that they were.
Not like you see any blood or anything.
Yeah, so they're probably alive. But what did you think of the whole fortress battle scenario?
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. I think when you get to the fortress, that's when you get the whole comic booky elements that we are really a full blown comic book movie at this point. Even though it does look aesthetically, like especially when you watch it today compared to other stands, it does look really goofy. It does really stand out, maybe in a not so good way. Or you can look at it like it looks cool, right? Like you can, I think both ways can be
That's
accepted
cool, but
at
it's
this point.
also very common. Like,
Yeah,
not even comic book. Comic book is not even the word in the sense of today's
it is cheesy
style.
though too. Yeah, it's cheesy. It's the '80s. Yeah.
So, yeah,
Yeah, so and then but like I feel like when we got to that point, it was almost like the threat stopped being a threat. Because you knew by this point Superman was gonna win. They probably weren't gonna be as strong now that they're in Superman's home turf. So it was one of those like you just knew that at this point it like the threat was gonna stop being the big threat. Even though it still gets me pumped up when he grabs Zod's hand and he twists him around and he throws him against the ice and things like that. It still gets me pumped just to see Superman come out on top. I love the way that he tricks Lex because, like you said, he knew that Lex was going to double cross him because he's a conniving SOB.
it's true.
And Superman got the one up on him. I think that to me, I am 100% with you. That was the best part. Was that Superman came on top because of his genius, not so much of um, his strength, so to speak. So
Yeah.
yeah, so it was a little bit of a clunky ending, but I do that it works for the most part. It works for the most part.
And I do like that he left Lex. He's like, find your own way home.
Yeah, yeah,
You found your own way here the first time. Find your own way
right,
home.
right.
That was cool. And then the end where Lois is clearly having a difficult time of. I don't think necessarily just reconciling the Clark and Superman and how she's going to deal with that on a day-to-day basis. I think it's more the fact that he's going to go off and have to be Superman and worry about the rest of the world, and they're not going to be able to have those moments, as much quiet time for themselves.
Mm.
Um, but I think it's more Superman seeing the emotional weight that it's having on Lois. Like, even though she says, I'll be fine, because when they land at her apartment, there's no indication that he's going to cause her to forget.
Right.
Like, they just leave it that, okay, don't worry, I'm not going to tell anybody. And he's like, yeah, I know you won't. But I think when he gets to the office, when he gets to the Daily Planet and he sees her there crying and, sort of the emotional toll that harboring the secret is going to have on her, that's when he makes the decision that, okay, I can't put this on her. I can't be with her.
Mm-hmm.
And just because also what just happened with the three Kryptonians, you know, kind of using her to get to him. But I think it was a very unilateral decision on his part in the sense that I don't think he said, listen, we can't we can't be together, we can't do this because of these. Like, I don't think they had that conversation. I think it was just him making the call.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then he kisses her, and somehow that made her forget. Again, I don't wholly
This
understand.
is super chapstick now.
Yeah, I don't understand how that works. This is another apparent ability that the producers and filmmakers just say, you know what? We're just gonna add Superkiss to the list of things that he can do, and that makes people forget that he's Superman or he's Clark Kent. Like, I don't understand. Like, there had to have been, again, given that he supposedly has holographic mirrors in the fortress. Had he told me that there was a device in the fortress that he could, or something that he could give Lois or zap Lois with that would make her forget, that would have been more plausible than, well, I'm going to kiss her now and she's different. So again, I get it. Honestly, I wish they would have just left it where, I guess the movies weren't as progressive, and even the comics maybe to that degree at that point, where they couldn't have found a way to just have her remember, or like just okay, she knows and she keeps the secret.
Mm-hmm.
That would have been a lot better than what this is, because it's like again, how does that kiss make her forget? Like, what is going on here? And again, in the Donner cut, that's when he does the whole. This is the moment he does the whole turning back time thing.
Mm-hmm.
But again, so while him turning back time makes more sense in
Right.
the context of that moment,
Yeah.
it still doesn't make sense because how is he able to turn back time? So
Only that specific. Yeah.
So again, I love these two movies, but man, there are some real
Chicken and the egg. Yeah.
there are some real head scratchers in both, and it's like, oh, yeah, it was so perfect, and then you came up with this. Like,
Yeah.
nobody in the writers' room or on the comic book side said, can we just keep them, like, have her continue to know and keep the secret? Like, nobody came up with that possibility.
Mm.
So yeah, it's a little like I get why he did it, but I just don't understand how. So I struggle with that. What are your thoughts on that particular ending?
Well, I mean, I think much like a lot of this movie, it is a movie of convenience, right? Like a lot of things kind of like just happen. Like a lot of things are just there. Like you said, like a lot of his newly discovered powers are kind of all of a sudden just there. Right? Like now this idea that now he can make somebody forget that he's Superman just by planting a kiss on them. Must be a really powerful kiss if that's the case.
Yeah,
But it is very convenient, right? And that's the thing where like they were going for like the comic booky tropes within this movie. It is a little bit like we talk about suspension of disbelief. That's probably where that term something like that would come about, where it's like, okay, I can kind of get it, but I still don't understand how one kiss can make somebody forget something like that, right? Like you would have had to like been just some kind of like magic or
yeah,
things like there had to been some kind of other elements involved at play here, um, to withstand that kind of level of power.
yeah,
So that is to me that like does scratch my head every time I see it, even though I do think that there is a part of me that thinks that it is kind of romantic and it is kind of sweet. It is still kind of confusing.
yeah.
But it's like that the more I watch it, it's like, do I hate it? No, but do I love it? No, right? So
Yeah,
it's kind of like it's
exactly.
just there.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I don't love it. I don't hate it,
right,
but it just gnaws at the back of my mind every
right.
time I see it. I'm like,
Yeah,
but how? And it's
yeah,
always like, but how? Like, what do you?
yeah.
So yeah. So again, overall, though, I think I still really enjoy this movie. I think in some ways it's better than the first, but in some ways it's not.
Mm.
You know, it's got its pros and cons.
Yeah.
I think the stakes are higher. The action is definitely amplified. Christopher Reeve is fantastic again and seems to be even more comfortable in the role this time around.
Yeah.
Um, I thought this film was a stronger performance by Margot Kidder and also Gene Hackman. I thought was better in this than he was. The role, the character was better than it was in the first. Um, General Zod is a badass villain, and Terrence Stamp is just great at it. And so overall, I always have a really fun time with this movie, but it does cause some confusion and head scratching moments, more so than the first one.
Mm.
Like, there's only one thing that I really have to excuse in the first one, and that's the turning the world back. Here, I kind of have to excuse, added powers and excessive comedy in places. So there's a lot more faults to excuse in this film than it was the first. That's why the first one is still just a slight couple notches above this
Mhm.
one. So I'll just go ahead and grade it, and then I'll let you do your final thoughts and grade. I'm gonna probably give this one a B plus.
Nice. Nice.
I'm gonna
Yeah.
give it-
I'm kind of right there with you. I think for the longest time, I love this movie. Like, I think there is a lot to enjoy in this movie. I think if you love the first one, you're probably gonna love this one. If you didn't like Superman the movie, there's a chance that you think this movie is a little bit more entertaining, which I happen to think. So I do think that's
Yeah,
where I
it
fall.
is. Yeah,
I think Superman 2 is more entertaining. There's more
yes,
action, like you said. The stakes are higher. The romance is a little bit more front and center. So it's a little bit more of an engaging movie than Superman the movie. Whereas I think Superman the movie is a better movie.
yeah,
Just because, but then again, I'm an origin guy, so I love the beginning of it all. I love how everything came to be.
yeah,
And I just think that movie just flows a little bit better, right? Like, I think you can find it both ways.
yeah.
There are some nitpicks that I've had over the years, right? Like, I think that it is a little bit too gimmicky. I think that it does lean too much into the cheesiness at times, the added powers, like you say. So, like, there's nitpicks that I have, but at the end of the day, I think it's a strong sequel. I think that it set the blueprint for up in the game. What a lot of sequels I look at something like Spider-Man 2, that I think has a lot of parallels to a movie like
Yes.
this.
Yeah.
So you do got to give it credit that at the time it did have a lot to achieve. When comic movies weren't expected to get sequels, when a sequel was a new term in
It was
1980, we're
yeah,
like, wait,
not the
what?
thing.
There's a two? There's a
Yeah.
Superman 2, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's like it had a lot to really go for it. Had some unexpected issues come along the way. But whether you like the downer cut or the theatrical version, I prefer the theatrical version.
So far,
Um,
for the record.
I do that. It's a great movie, but I've kind of been back and forth at him between like an A minus and a B plus, but I think I'm gonna fall on a B plus. Kind of same as you, which is by every metric, it's still a
Again,
thumbs up.
yeah,
So it's still a
yeah.
thumbs up.
I still have trouble when I see. I don't get, albeit I don't get the system, but
Yeah.
when I give something a B plus, it's pretty damn good.
Yeah.
When the cinema score gives something a B plus, apparently it's not good. I don't get it, but I'll never understand the way they do these things. But I digress. My B
Yeah.
plus is good. So
Yeah.
take
So is
that.
mine.
Yeah.
Yes.
So take that for what you will.
Yeah.
Essentially, what you're looking at is in the mid to high 70s on Rotten Tomatoes is what my B plus would be.
Yeah.
So take that for what it is. But yeah, still a fun time. And if you're a fan of Superman, you got to watch this. You got to have it in your collection.
Yeah.
And
Get the 4K now. Absolutely.
yeah, and listen, if you're planning on doing a rewatch of a bunch of Superman media before July 11th, definitely add this to your watch list for sure. But that'll bring this episode to a close. We will be back with another Superman adventure as we lead up to the release of the 2025 film that will hopefully send Superman and the DC Universe into the stratosphere of success. But before that, if you want to chat with Nick or I on social media, you can. Nick, where do you want them to look for you?
Yeah, you guys can follow me on everywhere on social media. I'm mainly on Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd at Nick Zendik, and you guys can most notably hear me on the Vigilante 1939 podcast. Just search that name of the show, and you'll find it anywhere you get your podcast set. Thank you, Adam. Always a fun time.
Awesome. I am going to start putting my Blue Sky account more into the description of the episode so I can start cultivating there. Because especially with the discourse of the 1.5 seconds, Twitter is starting to give me a headache. But I'm not leaving or anything. I'm just gonna prioritize putting my Blue Sky, and I don't remember the exact handle, so I'll put it in the description. You can click that and start following me there. We also have a Facebook group for the podcast network, which is listed in the description below. And I will add you to the group and we can continue the conversation there if you so choose. But remember, Superman 2 is forever. From the first time Superman and Lois have their extracurricular escapade in that conveniently placed bed to the last. So long, everybody.